Towards Zero Waste, a panel on solving the massive plastics packaging and waste problem. This included Sandra Martínez, CEO of Nestlé Oceania, Anthony Pratt, Executive Chairman of Visy, Brooke Donnelly, CEO of the Australian Packaging Covenant Organisation, and Gayle Sloan, CEO of the Waste Management and Resource Recovery Association of Australia. This was moderated by James Chessell, Executive Director of the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Right out of the gate, one of our greatest exports, Anthony Pratt, led us off with the fact that there's no excuse not to remanufacture 80% of the waste in a bin, which is cardboard and glass, into a product. We need to be focused on turning glass into glass and paper into paper or into clean energy, to turn bottles into bottles or transforming it into a wheelie bin and only then into clean energy, not into road furnishings. Mr. Pratt's talking about taking the least carbon-intensive option in the hierarchy of waste transformation. He let us know that landfills emit more carbon dioxide than all of global aviation, and put it quite simply, stop putting things in landfill. If we can halve what goes into landfill, we can also bring back manufacturing to Australia, driven by utilising the inexpensive resource that's in front of us, which we call waste. Anthony said 25 million tonnes of waste going into landfill each year, and Visy used 2 million tonnes of it. That's 23 million tonnes if you're out there and game to make a dent in things. Sandra from Nestlé pointed to the work they were doing with Daniel Gallagher and the team at IQ Renew, who are trialling collection of soft plastics from 140,000 homes on the New South Wales Central Coast, and then transformation through chemical recycling known as CAT-HTR, a process invented in Australia by Licella, where the plastics are reduced into an oil, which can be used for further fuel, chemical, and new plastic production. Brooke Donnelly of the Packaging Covenant spoke to problems before and after the bin, and directed folks to the federal government's National Waste Action Plan, with the goal being to phase out problematic and unnecessary plastics by 2025, and that all packaging is recyclable or compostable. The action plan is quite detailed and worth your time. Links to everything I'm mentioning are in the video description. Gayle from the Waste Management Association spoke to the nature of circular economy, that we need a paradigm shift to avoid creation of waste at first instance, and by redesigning products to enable reuse, repair and manufacture in Australia, there is an opportunity to create 4 times as many jobs in this area than we have now. I'd cite here that Clean Energy Australia notes that in 2017, Australia generated 67 million tonnes of waste, which is half a tonne for every person in the country per year, with 130,000 tonnes of plastic going into our waterways and oceans. The conversation honed in on the fact that we need to rethink our approach to creation, shifting to reuse and refurbishment, and that by looking at sustainable design, we can eliminate products to landfill, rather than focus on recycling a waste stream. Who's going to pay for it? I applaud Anthony Pratt's approach here, where I quote him as saying, "If you can tear it, we'll take it." Speaking for myself to you, it's high time we got serious about the fact that externalized cost is ruining our planet. And I'm excited to see the work of the Global Steering Group on Impact Investment, the Impact Management Program, and the Harvard Business School working towards impact-weighted accounts, where they're able to calculate the monetary environmental impact for over 2,000 large companies around the world. This means consumers are going to be able to see for a company that makes X billion dollars of profit, they create X billion dollars of environmental impact that the rest of the world, governments, citizens, and other businesses have to pay for. If you're in the tech industry, you know who Atlassian are. If you're not, you likely use their products every day, Jira, Confluence, and Trello, and may have never heard of Atlassian. They're an Australian unicorn valued at over $50 billion in 2019, and are in something massive like 70% of the Fortune 500 and ASX Top 100, NASA, eBay, Toyota, Coles. For full disclosure, I spent the past 4.5 years as a Director of Marketing and Communications for one of their Platinum Enterprise partners, Design Industries, so I may be more of a fan than most. This brings us to the session with Mike Cannon-Brookes, Atlassian co-CEO, who is into some remarkable things. My favourite being challenging in Elon Musk to get South Australia's big battery happening, and more recently getting behind building the biggest solar farm in Australia and the Northern Territory to supply Singapore with power via an undersea cable. Mike spoke to the strength of the Australian sustainability community, that outside of government we were very progressive, with the Business Council of Australia calling for net zero by 2050, and over 50% of the ASX already signed on to RE100, which is the global initiative to generate 100% of a company's power from renewable resources. Mike talked to the huge potential for the carbon economy in 10 to 20 years' time, and this being seen as a long-term goal for Australia. Turning to our energy mix and AMIO, the Australian Energy Market Operators Integrated System Plan, gas makes up 10% of our mix in the national energy market. So when discovering a gas-led recovery and it being a big transition fuel for the next 20 years, this simply isn't the case. The AMIO plan shows that whilst existing gas infrastructure needs to stay in place, no extra gas power plants are needed. Mike stated that if you want the lowest cost of energy and the quickest transition, gas is not the option. And when we talk about massive new gas extraction, that's an entirely different proposition. Putting it quite simply, over the next 20 years, we have to electrify everything and generate all of that electricity with renewables. The discussion on batteries and disambiguating them was fascinating. For example, that pumped hydro was a battery. It was put that rather than being obsessed by batteries, we need to be obsessed by the smart, efficient management of our energy. Also, that one of the greatest challenges is lobbyists, and that decentralized energy sources are truly democratic. They don't have a paid group of folks walking around Canberra trying to push individual approvals through. Basically, the sun doesn't have a lobbyist. To quote as accurately as I can, renewables represent the single best economic growth and strategic advantage for Australia. We can export energy, lower our cost of manufacturing, and create jobs, leading to the lowest power price in the world. We have no shortage of resources, and we have the technology to do it. Right now, with the pandemic crisis, we're in a clear moment of choice as to how we recover our economy, the green and gold recovery. This is the best option we have, not only for our hearts, but for our minds. Mike was asked why this wasn't getting through, and he talked to a lack of history, and that to be proactive, you require a belief in the future rather than looking backwards. He still finds people saying to him renewables are expensive, which is simply untrue. Learning and growth rates have to be considered. Where an industry struggles to communicate progress at a government level, it's easy to say the person is not hearing you. The how we say it and how we get it across is our problem. At the start of this section, I mentioned the undersea power cable to Singapore, and Mike got talking about intercontinental power grids and how these are vastly more efficient ways of transporting energy. He said, think about filling a ship with coal, hydrogen, or oil, and even if that ship is powered by hydrogen and then sailing it across an ocean, compared to sending power through a cable, is vastly more inefficient. Now imagine many, many cables, and imagine the massive economic engine we could create for the Northern Territory government by turning our landmass into a renewable power generator and exporter. Better yet, think about batteries and time zones. With west to east connectivity, we need vastly less storage in the global network, as Western Australia is 4 hours ahead of a huge amount of population, and we can export sun and wind power to 2 to 3 billion people directly north of us. We have massive space to generate from and an ability to do this. So what kind of COVID economic recovery should we all be lobbying for? Thanks for joining me for part 1 of the Summit Recap. Please help me get the word out by sharing this video, leave a comment, and make sure to follow my profile for more insights like this one, as well as interviews with world leaders in business, politics, and society. If you're working on something important that you want to succeed, let's have a chat about ensuring its success by crafting the message through video. Take a look at bravocharlie.global for more.